2019, the Irish government announced a biodiversity crisis, and the couple that I'm going to meet today and interview inspired me and many others to do what we can to help Irish biodiversity. They left their corporate jobs in the city and bought 17.5 acres of farmland in County Wicklow, just outside of Dublin. And with that, they got to work wilding it and managing it for biodiversity. They've built ponds, lots of ponds. They've built hedgerows, woodlands, every habitat you can name, and the difference is absolutely incredible. They started this project in 2017, before the biodiversity crisis was even announced, and they set up Wildacres. And Wildacres is an environmental and social enterprise, and all the profits that they get from their amazing workshops teaching people and communities how to build ponds, how to plant trees, and how to create habitats for biodiversity, as well as selling their produce, goes back into Wildacres itself. They've planted over 13,000 trees. They have 30-something ponds. They are a huge inspiration to learn from. And that is what this channel is all about, meeting experts and understanding what we can do to help the natural world. A huge thank you to Brian and Gilly, who you're going to meet now, for taking the time to talk to us on the REWILDLIFE. And I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have, because, like I said, this couple have been a huge inspiration to me, doing my 5 acres of wilding on their 17.5 acres. It's really quite inspirational. So come on, let's check it out. Go over and meet Brian and Gilly. Brian O'Toole and Gilly Taylor, thank you so much for doing an interview with us on the REWILDLIFE channel. It's an honor to meet you, and it's an honor to be here. You guys have been a real inspiration for me to attempt to do everything that you're doing here at Wildacres on my own land. So thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure,
Delighted,
absolute pleasure. Yeah,
delighted to welcome you to Wildacres. Yeah,
Amazing. I just love to know, I guess, how this all came to be, because you left your corporate jobs and you bought this amazing, I think 17.5 acres, is that right?
That's right,
yeah.
Here in County Wicklow, and started on this journey. Where did it come from? What was the driving force behind it?
Well, so the Wildacres here, 17.5 acres in Wicklow, it came from, I suppose, it started out with a young fella living in Cabinteely. Brian here at the very young age had access to a woodland to the back of his garden in Dublin suburbia, which is quite unusual, you know. But he chose to spend a lot of his youth there. You know, he just had this gift to, you know, be just close to nature all the time. And
I mean, you always had a great love of the outdoors.
I suppose
as
my background, I also grew up in Dublin suburbs and loved the great outdoors. So any excuse to get out to the Wicklow Hills, I'd always be out there. But I think in the intervening period, I suppose other careers got in the way, and then eventually that yearning for land to be able to help bring biodiversity back came about, just really becoming so aware over the last 15, 20 years of the climate and biodiversity crisis that was unfolding, and really just wanting to do something that could make a difference.
To make a difference in your own way. Yeah, that's incredible. So you bought this, these amazing 17.5 acres. And what was the land here like when you bought it? Was it anything like what we see here today?
Well, no, it wasn't actually. So it was 17.5 acres of what they classed as, I think the term is rank farmland, so which is wet, you know, which doesn't top the scale in relation to optimum agricultural land. So we were lucky. It's just we were in the right place, the right time. We bought it, and it's just been magical because we have the Red Cross River, which is a real bonus.
Running down behind you,
follows the tree line. So we have 3/4 of a kilometre Red Cross River bordering the nature reserve. And then myself and Gilly, 7 years ago, we just set to work. It was 4 fields, sheep wrecked, I suppose is a term that can be used. The sheep will graze, you know, right down to the quick. They'll graze everything. So we set to work just restoring habitats first. For the first 5 years, we started off, we dug our first pond, which is a distance away, just in an adjoining area. And then we have our pond in the backdrop here, which is our largest pond.
Beautiful
so that was 18 days. That was a huge job. It was a sea of mud. But it's been wonderful. I mean, that field up to before that pond was dug, was just a field that had a wet patch in the middle that would hold water for a couple of weeks. A couple of frogs would spawn in it, and the spawn would desiccate, would dry out. And now we have breeding mallard on it, we've little grebe, we've moorhen, we've kingfisher that come into the perch down below. So it's dragonflies, it's alive with dragonflies and damselflies and countless other species of invertebrates below the surface.
Because you're managing for biodiversity and to bring as much wildlife in as possible. So you've got an incredible array of habitats here as well. You've got your ponds, you've got your I think 4 acres of wildflower meadow. And you've got lots of native Irish hedgerow. But you've also been planting trees. Am I right? You have some native woodland as well.
Yeah, we do. So in total, so far we've planted in excess of 13,000 trees, native trees. Now that is across a range of different habitats. So we've planted, as you mentioned, hedgerow. We're probably close on 2 kilometres of native hedgerow that we've planted so far. And the woodland plots then, there's 2 of them that were planted under the native woodland scheme. One of them is 6 acres, another one is 1 acre. So they would be tree species that suit this land. So it's quite wetland. So we've got a lot of alder. There's downy birch in there as well. Plenty of hazel, hawthorn, Scots pine, and oak as well. Yeah. So so aside from those woodland plots, I suppose we've also planted trees along the riverbank. So for the riparian zone, it's trying to protect the river as best we can. Yeah. Because the sheep had grazed right up into the edge. So done a lot of planting there, and also just stands of trees. So at the end of the wildflower meadow, it's particularly wet field, and so we planted downy birch, which loves the wet. So there's a stand of downy birch at the end of that field.
Incredible. So you've got great variety as well.
Yeah, just a variety, and then sometimes just individual specimens that we've planted around. Spindle is a gorgeous native tree that just looks stunning in autumn time, and
rowan and some of the Scots pine.
I saw rowan coming in.
So we're
trying to showcase, I suppose, to people what you could do as well in just a small space. If you have a tiny back garden. I suppose included in those 13,000 trees would be the orchard. We've planted 80 fruit and nut trees.
Wow.
And, like in our tiny
and they're for the animals, I imagine, as much as for you.
Yeah, exactly. A bit of both, as well as
organic,
sustainable food production as well. It's,
Yeah.
It's plenty for nature and plenty for, harvesting for humans as well.
Yeah,
But,
the windfalls are a huge boon in the autumn for the likes of, field fares and redwings that come in from Scandinavia and, everything really. Pine marten we have here, the hillies, badgers, foxes, everything.
So on that, you're mentioning lots of amazing animals. How quickly was it that you started to see more of a variety and abundance of animals that started appearing on the land when you started the work?
I'll be honest with you, it was, we both worked hard at it over the years, and it's taken a while. It does take a while. Yeah. But we did, especially over the last few years, we've noticed the invertebrates, the likes of moths and you name it, beetles and everything, bees, butterflies,
which are critical because they're the foundation of the food chain, right? So you get them in, and suddenly you get everything upwards from there, from birds to mammals. So they're an absolute cornerstone to see coming in.
Yeah, that's what we do on the workshops that we run. We just try and explain that to people. That's just exactly as you've said. Quite often we focus on the megafauna. We don't really have megafauna in Ireland, but our version of megafauna,
more exciting animals, right?
The pine marten and whatever else, and the fox and the badgers. But you have to get the habitats in place and restore habitats and work from the bottom up.
And fall in love with the creepy crawlies. I mean,
completely, and they're beautiful. I mean, certainly with your ponds and things, you've got all the blue damselflies, obviously butterflies and things, and they're all they're the beautiful ones. But the creepy crawlies can be just as interesting and beautiful
just
as well.
As fascinating. I mean, we do a lot of moth monitoring, for instance. And we've 1,400 species of moth in the country, and some of them will just blow your mind. They're just, garden tiger moths and elephant hawk moths and brimstones and you name it. There's just so many fascinating moths.
I'd have to say dragonflies are one of my favourites as well. And you see them in flight during the summer, the likes of the emperor dragonfly.
They're
just stunning.
It's a blue damsel down on the river there as well.
But then when the sort of backstory to the flying insect, that they've spent a few years as an aquatic invertebrate onto the water, you know, and they're not so pretty then, you know.
But they're big predators, aren't they,
yeah,
as well? At
yeah.
that
and
stage?
they're often quite brown and
Yeah.
maybe, you know, considered ugly. But when you see the beautiful flying insect that emerges then, you know, for the summer,
Yeah.
and
They appeal to all audiences then.
Yeah.
The people who like those kind of
yeah.
exciting predators,
Yeah.
and then the more pretty ones as well. Like they,
Yeah.
And I suppose,
cover all
you know,
ground.
anything that's flying is more visible, you know, whether
Yes.
it's birds, you know, or the dragonflies, damselflies. It's more visible, so it's easier for people to kind of, I suppose, love them, get to know them
Yeah.
and love them then, you know. So, but we'd always recommend people to try and just love the little creatures, not to be getting rid of, you know, ants and earwigs are just really important part of that food chain. And, you know, as you always
sometimes-
mentioned about the Jenga block, you know,
Yeah.
if you've got the block, you start taking pieces out,
The
you
whole
know, the
thing
whole thing
crumbles, of
crumbles.
course.
So we
Yeah.
need all of those. And
Everything's so
wasps,
important.
incredible, important part of the
Sure.
ecosystem.
Somebody
and,
said there.
you
Actually,
know,
heard a great quote there recently. Somebody wrote in to say, what's the importance? Why do we need wasps? Why can't we get rid of wasps? And the response was, well, why do we need humans with us?
Yeah.
I know. That
Yeah,
it's a bit-
unfortunately, yeah. No,
But,
it is. It is
you know,
the
I
way
mean,
it goes,
wasps
though.
do fulfill a niche in the
Yeah.
ecosystem. They
Yeah.
keep numbers of aphids down, and you know, they'll predate on small spiders and whatever. So everything has its place.
Place,
Has its purpose, yeah.
So it's just,
And Brian, you mentioned your workshops. You touched on your workshops there a minute
Yeah.
ago. One of the most important things that I gather that your goal is with the land is to teach and inspire, as you have for me, and spread the word. So talk to me a little bit about your workshops and what kind of areas you cover.
I suppose 17.5 acres, what we've done is brought biodiversity back by bringing habitat back. But, you know, we'd love to see that happening all across Ireland. So in order to make an impact, we feel that education is a really important part. We want to sort of help to empower others to do what we've done here.
Yeah.
And you don't have to own acres of land to do that. You know, we've 2 million gardens in Ireland. If every garden had a little pond and, you know, say had a grass that wasn't mown all the time, that you can let wildflowers grow, that would make such a massive difference, you know. And so I suppose the workshops and tours are to enable people to do that. They come here, you know, hopefully, most people are saying they really enjoy them and we're getting great feedback. And, you know, I think that's the key thing is it's about education and people learn from each other when they come to the
Completely,
event, you know?
and then it has a ripple effect and spreads through communities, which is a
absolutely.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I have to ask about so I've seen on your Instagram and on your website you have some absolutely beautiful photography of the animals that you've captured here on camera. Do you have camera traps laid out around the land, or how does that work?
Yeah, we will. We have trail camera. We use a trail camera. We deploy a trail camera, I suppose, for want of a better term, around the land and have it in different various places. But we'd also just take a lot of photography with iPhones and with cameras, and we constantly be taking pictures of everything we see on a daily basis, whether it's a solitary bee, as we saw over in the woodpile, or a moth or whatever else, you know. So everything is.
What's, I suppose, the most surprising animal that you've seen on the land that you were like, oh my gosh, we've made a huge difference here if this has appeared? What
Well, I suppose one of those would be, I mean, we obviously we said we have the Red Cross River, which actually classed as a stream which borders the land. So we got really extensive footage of a pair of otters there in late February, early March.
Wow.
Constantly, every night, coming from the river, through the pond, especially into that pond and on to pond after pond. And they were just hunting the frogs, because we've thousands of frogs on the land. So they converge, they come out of hibernation, the males converge in the ponds as soon as possible, and they'll sing to attract females. So the otter, being a generalist, will eat, most of its diet is salmonoids, trout, which we have in the river, brown trout, but they'll take advantage of that, and they were coming in and they were hunting frogs, eating frogs night after night. So,
that must have been amazing to watch.
Yeah, and we've had pine marten, and we've had lots of other wonderful
I think
species recorded, kingfisher.
probably as well with the amount of ponds, we were just blown away by the amount of frogs we have now. Blown away, and newts as well. Yeah. But you know, dragonflies and damselflies. Without the ponds, you wouldn't have that.
Yes,
You know, so is it last year? Yeah, no, just actually in February of this year, we collected 5 buckets of frog spawn. So sometimes the frogs will end up laying their spawn in wet grass, and obviously once that dries out, then the spawn will die.
course,
So
yeah.
we've gone around rescuing the frog spawn, putting it in the nearest pond then, and so there's 5 massive buckets that got a lot of attention actually on our Instagram post. But you know, as we keep saying, every spawn is sacred. You know, it's just really important
absolutely.
that if you have the ponds, you'll get the frogs coming mating. Then you get the frog spawn, you get more frogs, and you know they spend most of the year actually in the grass. So having, if somebody has a pond at home in the garden, it's important to not cut the grass uniquely around it, because actually the frogs will spend most of their time in the grass,
in the grass,
in
not
the rough
necessarily
grass.
in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, that would have been a sight. I mean, you know, as I said, come February, late February, March, the ponds are just alive with frogs. But that would have been a common sight in years gone by in the countryside in Ireland. But now it's something, and you know, just to hear the cacophony of song, just frogs croaking to attract, it's just, and it strikes you, as I said, as something that would have been common around the country, you know, in land in years gone by. But now, unfortunately, and that's you know, we have to be realistic. I mean, biodiversity in Ireland is fairly decimated. We're coming from a level, you know, where the London Natural History Museum in 2018 did a worldwide survey of biodiversity intactness, and Ireland came 13th from the bottom, you know. But the plus side of it is now there is beginning the signs of good things happening, you know. Definitely there's a recognition there. There's bogs being re-wetted. There's a drive to plant trees. So, you know, I think we've hopefully bottomed out, and we're now on the upward curve.
We're through the worst of it. Do you? Because I personally, I actually get that sense of optimism out there, and I think there is much more awareness suddenly, maybe in the last 5 years or so, about the state of biodiversity, and you know, and bigger pictures like climate change and stuff as well. But do you remain optimistic about biodiversity and ecology in the country? Do you think there is a shift towards some positive light?
That's the first part I'd say is I think there's a shift. I think there's good things happening, and there's some great initiatives out there. And even at a governmental level, there's more focus on it. And the NPWS now are beginning to get reasonable funding. You know, they haven't been funded up until recently. You know, it's been ridiculous as to how the lack of funding for them to carry out their vital work. I think there's a shift and there's good things happening, but it needs to accelerate. It needs to happen a lot quicker, definitely.
I mean, the more funding they get, the more they can do. So, they, you know, while the funding is increased, you know, it needs to increase even further beyond that, because they do brilliant stuff. There's some fantastic people on the ground in the NPWS doing amazing stuff in terms of habitat restoration, in terms of reintroducing species, and brilliant work. But they'll be able to do more if there's more funding.
And more feet on the ground.
You know, ultimately, when there's an emergency, it needs to be treated like that. And so I think there's great stuff happening. It just needs to be more and faster, you know, and also kind of more public campaigns to empower every individual to know that they can make a difference. And I think that's what's missing, you know. And I know the councils are doing it. It's great with the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. It's made such a difference. You know, every council's on board now. There's now a biodiversity officer in every county as well. And you know, when people see on the roadside, you know, that the verges are being left for wildflowers to grow, brilliant.
Awareness. It's a wonderful
But they could actually sort of enhance that by also having a general campaign out there to say to people, don't mow during the summer, just leave the lawnmower in the shed, you know, cut a pathway through if you have, but almost to kind of have a sort of, I wouldn't say a tax on lawns, but like that lawn look has to go, you know, or astroing.
It's
putting
cultural shifts
yeah.
are very hard to make happen in any short term. But I think there is progression towards it.
I think there is. Yeah. I do think, you know, that's the wonderful thing about biodiversity. Everybody can do something, and the benefits are huge to people. So, you know, if we all did something in our outdoor space, what you're doing is, it's not just the small thing that you're doing. You're creating stepping stones of habitat, and that then creates corridors of habitat, and that means that our wildlife then can move along those corridors, and there's connectivity
from garden to garden.
Exactly.
And they all work as one big habitat.
Exactly. That's
what would you say is the main habitat perhaps that people could create regardless of the size of their, if you were to say one, regardless of the size of their garden or their patio or whatever it may be? What's the one thing you love? Is it the P word?
It is. Yeah. Well, it's in the backdrop. It's aquatic. Yeah. But ponds. I mean, hedgerows, woodland, native shrubs, but ponds. I suppose we planted 13,000 trees. And I'll be honest with you, under the woodland scheme, the trees that we planted as future woodland, they're for the next generation to sit under. So we're not going to sit under those unless we're cryogenically frozen, which I hope to God maybe we will be. So, but, and woken up. But they're for the, an oak tree, for instance, they say first 300 years is classed as juvenile, next 300 years is classed as middle-aged, and the next 300 years it's sentient or it's in its, its decline. And that's when it's incredible for biodiversity. I mean, it's incredible for biodiversity right the way through. But when they reach the veteran status,
it's when it's most beneficial. And so 600 years to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we're saying is that if you want to do something really immediate to help biodiversity, ponds of any size. I mean, our smallest pond is a recycled guinea pig cage base. Yeah. And it's an incredible pond. It's oxygenators in there, and it supports wildlife. So ponds will just support so much wildlife, and it's been proven. Even for our own benefit, to be around blue spaces as to be around nature. This used to be a bit woolly, but now it's scientifically proven. Just is so beneficial for our health.
So good for your mental health and your state of mind. That's something that I've learned recently as well. It's hugely beneficial in that regard. I noticed as well that might be something that's quite easy to uptake. Microhabitats. Can you talk to me a little bit about microhabitats in terms of log piles and habitats that might benefit our native bees?
Yeah. So we would. I mean, myself and Julie have created. It's becoming a bit of
of an obsession,
like the ponds and like everything else. But
we
took in tons. We were lucky enough to be able to get tons of deadwood over the last couple of years, and we've created deadwood piles. And deadwood piles are just incredible for biodiversity. I mean, you take all the frogs and the newts. I mean, they, people think of those as aquatic animals, but in reality, they just breed in water, and otherwise all year long they need a damp habitat. Yeah. So they'll leave the water and they will go to those log piles, for instance, or it doesn't have to be a log pile. It could even just be a couple of pieces of log, in a damp corner of a garden or a small space. And that will support lots of wildlife. Your frogs, if you have frogs in the area, they'll hide away under there. That's a perfect hunting ground for them to eat woodlice and slugs and whatever else. And would
the likes of perhaps hedgehogs and things hibernate in log piles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They'll hibernate away in places that they feel safe and that are dryish and warmish, and not exposed completely to the elements. So and then just take log piles. I mean, in Ireland we have 240 what they call saproxylic beetles that just rely on saproxylic habitat, being a deadwood habitat, that rely just on deadwood to complete part of their life cycle. And we have, those logwood piles you can see in the background there, we've a great spotted woodpecker that come in there almost daily, and you'll see all the drill holes in the logs where they'll drill in to extract the beetle larvae. And so it's just, they attract so much wildlife. They're incredible, actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And you think that really, I suppose any garden could actually have a combination of all those things. Yeah. Like a mini pond, they could have mini meadows, they could have a mini log pile, a mini wild area for nettles and thistles to grow. So even in a tiny back garden, you can make it an absolute sanctuary for wildlife. And still have it as a human space as well.
Yeah, and the enjoyment.
I think that's a really important element of it.
Having your deck chairs there to watch all the wonderful insects come in, enjoying
But that's the infectious part, right? That hopefully will lead others to go and do the same thing.
Yeah. And you don't need to be an expert either. I mean, nobody needs to know the Latin names of every bee or every bird that comes in. Really, if you have a little pond and a situated somewhere you can see it, ideally. So even though you could sit there, one day there we were working away on our laptops, sitting at the table, we can see our small suburban little back garden pond, and we counted 10 bird species within an hour came in just to drink from it and bathe, and even that is so relaxing, and it's an interaction with nature. It's a connectedness with nature that we're lacking, that we're missing.
And I think that if there's one wish that I would have, would be that the government would introduce into schools all the way through for the 14 years that people spend in school, that ecology would be a part of your every single day. Every single day that you're learning something, so that you're not as an adult then having to discover learn what are our 28 native tree species, that you would automatically know that, but not just the nature table in junior and senior infants, and then it's gone, or not just sort of a chapter in biology that you learn about.
Yes, exactly.
It should be an
plants.
ongoing,
It should
continual.
be ongoing, so that everybody, it's like living, breathing, like
Because
a language that
and
it
it
becomes
used
your
to be,
language.
right? Like people
Yeah.
used to be a lot more in
Yeah.
tune
Yeah.
to nature and to the countryside, and it is part of our day-to-day lives because we walk amongst it all the time, and we should know what
Absolutely.
we're seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you must collect quite a lot of data around the animals and the flora and fauna that you find here on the land. Do you work with any kind of groups to gather data and help the progress of the understanding of how our wildlife is doing in any way?
Well, certainly you do a lot of posting up to the National Biodiversity Data Centre in Water, doing
Fantastic.
incredible work, and they have a portal now that anybody can be a citizen scientist, and literally all you have to do is, when you observe something, just put up that information on the website. So there's a recording platform. You just very straightforward, and you do that for a lot of species here. That we upload that
as much as we can. There's only two of us, so
as much as we can. But like, if anyone is considering that as an action for biodiversity, it's absolutely brilliant. So you might live in an apartment, don't have any land at all, but you can contribute to biodiversity by recording from your local park, just whatever you see, just upload it to the
and I think
data
it's
centre.
worth saying actually that just in relation to that, people sometimes think, oh, well, what have I got? What do I see? I see maybe a ladybird in my back garden or whatever. But that's the info they want, because
everything.
The great. I mean, this is often trotted out by experts. They'll say, look, what's common today mightn't be common tomorrow. So if you record, say, a blue tit in your back garden, and it's there again the next day and the next day, and you send that info into the biodiversity data center, they can then build up a picture, of a population of a species and how they're declining or increasing or moving,
migrations.
All of
exactly.
that.
Guys, how can people find out more about Wildacres? Because I'm sure by watching this video, people are going to want to jump on board and do a course with you guys. So how do we find out more information about you?
Through the website wildacres.ie, and so up there we find lots of information about the habitats here, about biodiversity recorded, but also our workshops and tours are all up on the website as well. So
and we do
probably the blog and the newsletter as well is great for people to follow if they don't get a chance to come here for an event. They can follow what we do through
I'm signed up to the newsletter.
It's
incredibly detailed. It's fantastic.
Carried away.
And the blogs, the back catalogue it's up there on the website as well for anyone to access.
It's good to know somebody's reading it anyway.
I'm reading it.
And Instagram, we're on Instagram as well, Wildacres Nature Reserve, and then on LinkedIn through our own profiles, especially Brian O'Toole.
You do a mammoth amount of work for two people for the biodiversity in the country. So big thanks to you on behalf of Irish Biodiversity, and thanks for inspiring me and others to take it on as well.
And we learn from everybody. Everyone that comes to us, we learn from everybody that comes to us as well.
Sharing knowledge is key.
Absolutely. So much to learn.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.